الرحمن الرحيم قالوا تالله لقد آثرك الله علينا وإن كنا لخاطئين قال لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين اذهبوا بقميصي هذا فألقوه على وجه أبي يأت بصيرا وأتوني بأهلكم أجمعين صدق الله العظيم. Respected ulama and my dear young friends, last week we mentioned that the moment and the time to reveal the secret and to let the brothers know and to inform them that the Aziz Misr in reality was Yusuf ﷺ took place, and the difficulties, the trials and the hardships had come to an end. And Yusuf ﷺ told the brothers, Ana Yusuf wa hadha akhi, I am Yusuf and this is my brother. This is my brother Binyamin. And scholars say that he said this to, number one, either to clarify that he did not steal anything. In fact, he is my brother, that's why I kept him behind. And then he went on to say, قَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا, that Allah has been very kind to us. He has bestowed us with so many favors. And at this point, at this junction in this ayah, ulama and scholars have deduced a very important point. That when a person goes through a turbulent times in his life, he goes through trials, difficulties, hardships, and then at the end of all the hardships, at the end of a long period of difficulty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows him the happy days. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows him the good days. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows him the blessings and favors him. Now at this moment, what should a person do? And he should do exactly what Yusuf did. That 40 years of difficulties, 40 years of trials, 40 years of separation from his father. Yet when the brothers came and the time for difficulties had come to an end, and the time for happiness and joy had come, Yusuf did not make any mention of the hard times. He did not tell the brothers, have you forgotten? I've spent 40 years in difficulties. Have you forgotten the night that you threw me in the well? How my 3 nights went? Have you forgotten how I was transported to Egypt? Do you know I stayed in the jail? Yusuf did not mention any of that. In fact, he said, قَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been very great to us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored us. This should be our situation as well. That in life, if you have hard times, you've been through a hard young age, teenage, or you've had difficulties in how social problems, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows you with the good days, then don't hold on to the hard days. Don't go on saying, oh, you don't know how I grew up. You don't know the difficulties we went through. You've never seen the difficulties. You weren't even there. I went through this. No. In fact, you should mention the good days. That's why in the Quran, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لِرَبِّهِ لَكَنُودٌ, it's usually translated as, indeed insan is ungrateful. But Hassan Basri rahmatullahi mentions that over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala he's referring to a specific ungratefulness. And this is towards a person who, after having gone through tragedies and challenges in his life, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows him the happy days and gives him a life filled with prosperity and goodness and blessings, what does he do? At that moment he forgets the blessings. At that moment he forgets the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all he does is talks about the wrongs. That you don't know how I grew up, you don't know how I lived in this house, you don't know how this happened, or how the people were with me to expect. So from this we can deduce that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants somebody some goodness, then he should forget about the hardships. And when a person does introspect and closes his eyes and thinks, then the hardships and the trials that we go through are very minimal. Although they are floating around our head, they are minimum compared to the thousands of ni'mas Allah SWT has given us. A person closes his eyes and thinks that, okay, I might have this problem in life, I'm not getting a job, I'm looking for a job, but there are people who have jobs with disabilities. There are people who are paralyzed. There are people who can't walk. Allah SWT has made me perfectly fit. He's made me healthy. He's given me a shelter. He's giving me safety, He's giving me peace, He's giving me iman. When a person counts all the other ni'mat, that He's giving me, organs are working, kidneys are working. When a person thinks like this, then he realizes that, no, wait a minute, I'm not on the negative side, I'm on the positive. Allah SWT has given me so many. Once we had to go to India, and we were doing some charity work as well. So we went to a hospital in Ahmedabad, in Ahmedabad, what we call this. And the hospital was specialized for people that had diabetes, that were on dialysis, and their kidneys had failed. And we went and spoke to people, some teenagers, some youngsters, and they were saying their story, how it works. So one kidney, which is the size of your fist, if that kidney stops working, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect everybody, keep everybody afia. If that kidney stops working in that hospital, a whole machine, roughly 1.5 meters by 60 centimeters wide, that machine does that one kidney's job. And what does it do? The person has come, the patient has come, he sleeps on the bed, and tubes are put in his hands, and the blood is taken out, and it's refined, purified, filtered, and then it's put back into his body. But whilst this whole process is going on, the person can't do anything. He has to stay lying on the bed. When the process finishes, he is so exhausted mentally and physically that he has to go home in a wheelchair. This was one person that told us his whole week how he goes. He goes, then the next day I'm still totally exhausted. The third day, as I get better and I'm on my feet, I can do a few things. On the fourth day, I have to come back to hospital for dialysis. I can't travel anywhere, because before I travel, I have to try to make some arrangements that will there be a hospital there for me to do my dialysis. When they put the tubes on, over time, the lumps start to grow on the arms. So he showed his right hand, and his whole right arm was filled with lumps. And they started on his left arm, and there's a lump, so they move and they have to go to another place. When you see these people, yet you're smiling, you think, subhanallah, this one ni'mat of a kidney, which is doing such a great task in our body, that whilst we are moving around, whilst we are eating, whilst we are sleeping, it's doing its routine, yet we don't even pay attention to this. Just this ni'mat on its own, if you think of it, we'll forget all our tragedies and all our difficulties. And no, subhanallah, may Allah has bestowed me with kidneys, with a liver, with so many other organs in our bodies. So anyway, when a person thinks about this, then inshallah he will understand. And that's why our Kabli says, well, that a person should spend some time. What should he do? Muraqabah ihsan. Muraqabah ihsan is that a person fixes a time during the day, once a day, once in 2 days, 3 days, once a week. He should sit and just ponder on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings. One day he thinks of the eyes. That, subhanallah, I've got eyes. Number one, I'm not colorblind. Number two, I'm not even blind. Number three, I can see. And I can see everything. Imagine without these eyes, I wouldn't be able to see my parents, my siblings. I wouldn't be able to see the Quran Sharif. I wouldn't be able to see the Kaaba Sharif. When a person thinks like this, I'm so lucky Allah's given me a pair of eyes. The next day he thinks about his ears. Next day he thinks about another limb. And don't think that, what will I think about? When you go down that lane of thinking, and you sit down, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts something in your mind. And automatically you will start to think, I've got fingers. Without fingers, I wouldn't be able to eat. Without fingers, I wouldn't be able to hold anything. When a person starts to think, what does this do? This muraqabah ihsan creates love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your heart. Creates love. That, subhanAllah, I'm so lucky. I've got a creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has made me, created me so perfectly, that every organ is doing his job, and he's made this perfect for me. And over time, when he keeps thinking, then the muhabbat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase. And when there's love for Allah in your heart, then nobody needs to tell you to come to pray namaz. Nobody needs to tell you to wake up for Fajr. Nobody needs to tell you that don't disobey Allah. Because that love will be the driving force now. That love will say, I can't do this. Innal muhibba liman yuhibbu muti. That's what the Shairi says. Innal muhibba liman yuhibbu muti. That indeed the lover, he is always obedient to the beloved. He will never do anything that will displease his beloved. He will never do anything that will displease Allah. So anyway, and even on a psychological perspective, when a person only thinks of negative things in his life, then he will live a life of misery. And besides this, the people around him will also become miserable. Because it happens, he should be the friend circle, and one person is down, the whole friend circle breaks down. You think, oh, okay, let's go home. One person's misery transfers and transpires into everybody else's. So if a person holds on to his negatives, then he will always have a depressed mind, negative thinking, and miserable attitude. And this will have an impact on the family. It will have an impact on his children and his siblings. So from this ayat we learn that we should not hold on to these things. The second thing Allah Yusuf says is إِنَّهُ مَن يَتَّقِي وَيَصْبِرْ. Ulama say that just like the Surah Fatiha is the heart or the gist of the whole Quran. The gist of the whole Quran is in Surah Fatiha. Similarly, ulama say that the whole of Surah Yusuf, the whole story, the whole tale, the whole narrative, the gist of it is this: إِنَّهُ مَن يَتَّقِي وَيَصْبِرْ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. That whoever exercises taqwa and whoever be patient, then he will not go unrewarded. But this is the summary and this is the message that is the whole conclusion of Surah Yusuf. If you look at Yusuf's life, sabr, taqwa, sabr, taqwa, sabr, taqwa. He's being tortured by his brothers, sabr. He's been flung in the well, sabr. He comes out and he's been sent as a slave to Egypt, sabr. The Aziz wife tries to seduce him, taqwa. She closes the doors and tries to carry out the act, taqwa. He gets wrong. He's given a wrong, he's blamed for no reason. Sabr, goes in jail, sabr. Brothers come back, now he is giving them. He can have a go at them, but sabr, 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 taqwa, sabr. This is a gist of Yusuf's story. And ulama say that this is the actual conclusion. If a person ponders, this is the strongest message. That whoever exercises taqwa and sabr, nothing will go unrewarded. Allah will definitely evaluate and reward him and give him something greater in the after, but even in this dunya. So anyway, from today's ayat, then Yusuf salam, when he told them that I am Yusuf, you can imagine the guilt inside them and the shame and the embarrassment that what did we do? We done so much wrongdoings to Yusuf, and we hurt him and we plotted against him and we failed, and we tried to keep him down, and our motive was to separate him and put him away, push him away from the limelight, push him away from our father, and we should get that love and that attention. But all of a sudden, what we're seeing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has elevated him and raised him even more. So straight away they said, قَالُوا تَاللَّهِ قَالُوا تَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا وَإِن كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. That they said, قَالُوا تَاللَّهِ Tallah, we swear by Allah. لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you preference over us. وَإِن كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. And we are guilty, in fact. That they admitted and they confessed that, oh Yusuf, by Allah you have been favored. You have been honored. You have been elevated. And you have been blessed. And we accept our mistake. We are guilty of wrongdoings. We inflicted torture on you. And we inflicted you with hardships and difficulties. We separated you from our father. But in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preserved you and He has given you preference over us. And no matter how much we try to block you, today you are in such a position that we envy you. You are the Aziz Misr. In fact, not just us, the family, but the whole of the nation of Egypt envies the status that you are on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you preference and He has made you Aziz, and we are where we were. Nothing of ours helped us. Our motive did not finish. Our motive was not fulfilled. And in fact, we are guilty of this and we are sorry about this. So they express their remorse and their regret and they apologize. But Yusuf salam, a Nabi, he answers to them whilst they were standing with shame and guilt. Yusuf says, قَالَ لَا تَثْرِيبَ عَلَيْكُمْ الْيَوْمِ. That لَا تَثْرِيبَ عَلَيْكُمْ الْيَوْمِ. Yusuf replied, there is no blame on you today. Al-yawm, there is no blame on you today. يَغْفِرُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. May Allah forgive you, and He is the most blessed. He's the most merciful. So straight to Yusuf, when they admit their wrongdoings and they confess to it, Yusuf does not criticize them. He does not blame them. He does not rebuke them. That today, okay, I've got the muscle today. The tables have turned today. So okay, 40 years ago you had to go at me. Today is my turn. Let me show it. No mention of this. In fact, he said, "La tathriba alaykum al-yawm." That there is no blame on you today. And ulama say that Yusuf was trying to say that I'm not going to blame you now, and never in the future will I ever bring this on my tongue. That remember 40 years ago this. That's why sometimes we forgive, but we forget. We forget to forget. We don't forget. Yusuf said, I will forgive and forget. I will never bring this on my tongue, that you done this to me and this to me. Right? Sometimes we forgive, but we keep it in the back of our minds. And when time comes, we don't tell him, you forgot that day you done this. You forgot you done this to me. This is not complete forgiveness. Forgiveness is that what you said something. You forgive and you forget altogether. And when you look in the history of, in the seerah of Rasulullah, when he came to Makkah as a conqueror and victorious, and he was on the mount, and as he entered Makkah, the Quraysh surrounded him. When they surrounded him, he said, Ya Ma'ashar Quraysh, O the people of Quraysh, ماذا ترون ما أفعل بكم? What do you think I'm going to do to you today? What do you think I'm going to do to you today? There was a time where you expelled my Sahabas. You used to torture my Sahabas. You used to inflict harm on us. You were the staunch enemies of Islam. You were my enemies. What do you think I'm going to do today? And they all said, Akhil Kareem, we have hopes in you. You are very grateful. You are merciful. And we have hopes in you. So Rasulullah said, Akulu kama qala akhi Yusuf, la tathiba alaykum. I will say to you exactly what Yusuf, my brother Yusuf said, that there will be no rebuke on you today. No blame on you today. No criticism. What's happened has happened. And then he gave a general forgiveness to everybody. That everybody is forgiven. Generally. This is what we take away from this. That things happen in life. Ups and downs happen. And we have altercations and sometimes there's problems. But you should have the heart to forgive. You should have the heart to forgive and forget. And one thing that comes here, a question that Allama Alusi has mentioned, as Mashafi Tamim has also mentioned in his tafsir, is that how come after so many years of difficulties that they put on Yusuf, separated from their father, he had to go in jail because of them. If they would not have thrown him in the well, he would have not been transported to, he would not been taken as a slave to Egypt, nothing would have happened. He went through so many hardships, trials, difficulties, pain, agony. But how come they said, all they said was that Tallahi laqad atharak Allah alayna wa in kunna laqatiin. And straight Yusuf said, La tathriba alaykum. No blame, I'm forgiven you. How did he muster the courage to forgive them instantly? And somebody has given us such hardship, what's our way? He'll come to our house, we won't open the door. He'll come to do salam, we will turn our face away. He'll cry to us, we'll say, I don't know, this is great kind. We will make him do all sorts. And when it comes to forgiving, we will be very miser and stingy in forgiving. How did Yusuf forgive in a moment like this? And Allama Alusi mentions in his tafsir that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these Anbiya their eyesight is much deeper than ours. They look beyond the surface. They look behind that. And what do they look at? They look at the makhluk bi'aynil haqq, with the eyes of haqq, with the reality. That wait a minute, I was meant to be sat on the throne. I was meant to go in jail. Who destined that to go for me to go in jail? Who decreed that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who decreed that I go in the well? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed from before that I had to go in the well. What are these people? These people are just characters. They are just instruments. They are just fulfilling and executing Allah's plan. Allah's already planned everything. What's going to happen in the whole world? What's going to happen to me, you? It's already planned from before. All there is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has fixed. This person will do this and this is the reason and this is the consequence. They become the reason, but the ultimate reason is who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed this, these are just characters and players. And they are just mere people that are fulfilling this role of decrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in reality, are they the cause of it? That's why straight away they forgive. Good example, husband and wife living a very good life, happy life, and all of a sudden life changes, becomes a bit turbulent, and they have quarrels and fights, and then it becomes a normal thing that they're not getting on. One day the father comes, takes his daughter home. Imagine, this is just an example just to make it easy. Takes her home, and then he requests the son-in-law that give a divorce. And divorce happens. Now when we look at it from our eyes, what do we see? We look at it as, if the father wouldn't have taken the daughter and he would have given us time, we could have reconciled, we could have reunited, but it's the father's fault. He forced me to give a talaq. So if after 2 years the father comes to say maafi and forgiveness, will we ever forgive him? No. We will linger with it and we will hold on to what? That no, you the cause of it, you the cause of it. But if we take a step back and look with a deeper eye, that wait a minute, our marriage was for 8 years. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that we are going to live together for 8 years. After 8 years, we are not going to live together. It was decreed by Allah, that's why the talaq happened. If it wasn't decreed, we would have been living forever. We would be living till we die together. But Allah decreed. So the father, what was the father? The father was just an instrument. The father was just a character. He was just a player in fulfilling this decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you look at it like this, then if the father comes to you with this mindset, and you have this mindset that, wait a minute, whatever happened, yes, we had good times, happy times, and it became bitter towards the end, and I had to give a talaq, and the father took her home. But wait a minute, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decreed that we would live together till this date. After that, it was impossible for us to live together because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already decreed. Will you look at the father as the only cause? Or will you say he was just a player and an instrument in the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When you look at it like this, what will happen? To forgive you will become easy. And this is what Allah Ma'alusi mentioned. That Yusuf ﷺ looked beyond. That wait a minute, for me to get on the throne, I had to go through all this. It was decreed from day one by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My brothers were what? They were just characters playing out that role and that decree and that plan that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had fixed. And they played it and it happened. So this was in reality is all the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why for them to forgive was instant. La tathiba alaykum al-yawm. Yaghfirullahu lakum. And then he says, don't worry, I have forgiven you. But yaghfirullahu lakum, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also forgive you. Me as a creation has forgiven you. I have great hopes that the Creator himself is much, much, much more merciful than me. He will also definitely forgive you. Yaghfirullahu lakum. Why will he forgive you? وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. Because he is the most merciful. So then, after that, you can imagine that these brothers, that guilt has kind of weared away, is faded away, that okay, Yusuf salam, he's very generous, very grateful to us, he's been very kind to us. So that barrier has kind of broken. So they must have started talking about how's father, Yusuf must have inquired what's going on in Canaan, how's our father, and they must have related. And he knew from before as well that he's become blind, and I mentioned before that Jibreel came to him, and he mentioned that your father has been crying, and since the last 6 years he lost his sight. But he inquired, and they must have told him that he's been through a lot of hard days, and he's been crying, and you kept Binyamin back, so he became even harder. So Yusuf says, "Idhabu bi qamisi hada." That go, idhabu bi qamisi, go with this shirt of mine. إِذْهُ بِقَمِيصِ هَذَا فَأَلْقُوهُ عَلَى وَجْهِ أَبِي, and place it on the face of my father. فَأَلْقُوهُ عَلَى وَجْهِ أَبِي, my father. يَأْتِي بَصِيرًا, he will become sighted again. His eyesight will return. وَأْتُونِي بِأَهْلِكُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ, and then all of you, وَأْتُونِي, bring the entire family back to me. So Yusuf, after pardoning them and forgiving them, he tells them, instructs them, go back with my shirt, because he knew. And this was a mu'jiz of the Anbiya, that through his shirt, Yaqub eyesight was restored. So, you can imagine the excitement and the happiness they are going with. And this shirt of Yusuf has been mentioned in the Surah Yusuf 3 times. The first instance was right at the beginning. When was it mentioned? When the brothers came at home in the night, crying with the shirt with false blood on it. And they said that a wolf has eaten him. This was the first time Yusuf's shirt was mentioned. The second time Yusuf's shirt was mentioned was when he ran to the door and Zuleika was following. And she held onto his shirt and ripped. And that shirt became a means of witness and a means of defense for Yusuf's innocence. And the third time the shirt is mentioned is right now, where this shirt now becomes a means of a remedy. The shirt that made his father cry and lose his sight, now another shirt of Yusuf will become the one that restores his sight. And it's mentioned to see that Yehuda was the eldest brother. When Yusuf gave the shirt, that take my shirt and place on our father's face, he said to his brother, give me the privilege and give me the honor of carrying this shirt. Why? Because the first time when I took this shirt home with the blood, I was the one that carried the burden of giving the bad news. I was the one that gave him the shirt with the false blood, and through which he cried and he lost his sight. Give me the honor that today I become the one that takes the same shirt back, and I become the bearer of good news. And through this shirt, that last time, because of my bad news and the shirt, he lost his sight. Today, because of my good news and the shirt, his eyesight is restored. The brothers accepted, and they gave him the privilege of taking the shirt home. And when he took his shirt home, and they put the shirt on his face, Yaqub eyesight returned. One thing to mention here, towards the end, Lama Qurtubi mentions that he says, وَأْتُونِي بِأَهْلِكُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ, that bring the whole family back. Halaki, the asl, the core, and the focus was not the whole extended family. Some say the family, because there's 12 brothers, had extended in tens, 30, 40, I think is 93 individuals. But the core was not the whole family, the core was the father and the mother. The father, Yaqub, he wanted Yaqub by him. And he wanted his mother, his real mother, Rahil, had passed away. So he was his auntie, who was Rahil's sister. Yaqub then got married to his sister-in-law, and she's also a mother to Yusuf. She's a mother because she's Yaqub's wife, and also because auntie, mother's sister, Khala, al-Khalatu bi-manzilat al-Um. Rasulullah mentioned in the hadith that the Khala is like a mother. So in both cases, she was like a mother to him anyway, whether you take as Yaqub's wife or Khala. So these two are the main that he wanted to get back to Egypt, so to the kind of a better life, prosperous life. Life in Canaan was difficult, but look at the respect he has. That how can I tell them that bring father? How can I subject, or how can I instruct them to bring Yaqub to me? I'm the son. I should be going to him. I should be presenting myself to him. But because of duties, because of responsibilities, because of circumstances that I have got the whole of Egypt to look after, I am on the throne, I have got all these responsibilities to fulfill. I can't just take a journey to Canaan. But at the same time, to say bring father he felt is out of his disrespect. How can you subject your father? Come to me. So out of this respect, what he said, bring the entire family. And in the entire family, who's also included? The father and the mother. Inshallah, next week we'll talk a bit more about the parents and the importance. I just remembered once, as Mufti Taqi mentioned the story, that some guests came from Egypt, and they were the guest of the Mufti Taqi, and whilst they were in Darul Karachi, they were eating or something, and the subject came up. But there's an old saying that Quran was revealed in Arabia in Arabic, and the Egyptians recited the Quran in terms of tajweed, they excelled, and the Persians, Ghaliban, excelled in writing, that they are real good calligraphy. And the Hindustani, at that time, Hindustan was the whole of the subcontinent, they excelled in understanding the Quran. So Mufti Taqi was talking to him, and he said, let me tell you a story regarding this. What's the story? Because once I was in Masjid Nabawi, Medina Munawwara, and he was a very learned person, a scholar from Egypt. So the friends told me that give us some nasiyat. And I sat on the side and I started giving nasiyat. All of a sudden there's a bit of a gathering, and people gathered. And I gave nasiyat and then question and answers. So one person from the majlis, from the gathering, asked that who has more higher ranks, the father, the parents, or your teacher or your sheikh? So I said to him that the sheikh, because ulama say that your parents bring you into this world. They give you birth and they bring you into this world. Your mother gives you birth, the father is a reason for it, cause for it, and they give you birth. But it's the ustad, the sheikh, that takes you back to Jannah, because he guides you. He tells you what to do, what not to do. He gives you a tarbiyat. He instills a good akhlaq into you. So he said, I said this, and I give a few other things. So one person stood up and he said, can I ask you a question? Where did you draw your answer from? Because as far as I know, usul fiqh is that you look for something in the Quran first. If you don't find the answer in the Quran, you look for it in hadith. If you don't find it in hadith, then you use logic. And if you don't find it in logic, then it's ijma, what the ummah says, and then it's your logic. So how did you get to the answer? How did you get to an answer that the sheikh has a higher rank than a parent? So I stayed quiet, that okay, tell me what you're trying to say. So he goes to me, in the Quran, Allah SWT says, وَبِالْ وَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا أَنِشْكُرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيْكَ, be good to your parents. أَنِشْكُرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيْكَ, be grateful to me and your parents. So in the Quran, Allah has mentioned the importance of parents, but there's no mention of importance of ustad or sheikh. So according to the Quran, who has an elevated rank? The parents or the sheikh? Parents. Let's go in the hadith. He said in the hadith, if you look at the hadith, Jibreel was bimanzilatul ustad sometimes. He used to come as a teacher. He used to come to convey messages. But never is there any narration where Rasulullah put down his cloak or his chadar for Jibreel, although sometimes he came in a human form. Yet when Dai Halima came, who gave Rasulullah milk, she was like a mother. She was a milk mother. When she came, there's narration that he put down his chadar for her. So, according to hadith as well, respect and honor for the parents is elevated than the mother, than the ustad and shaykh. And then he gave one third reason. And then he said, the shaykh goes, that the Egyptian shaykh goes, I was a bit baffled, astonished. Who is this person? And then the person, after a little while, went away. So I asked the people, who was this person? He had profound knowledge. My thinking did not go that far. So people inquired and said, he was a Shaykh al-Hadith of Darul Deoband Mufti Mohammed Palampuri. Mufti Mohammed Palampuri, he was one that stood up and said this. From this we can understand how much respect. This doesn't mean that you disrespect your ustaz or anything, by no means. In fact, even your teachers who are at school, who are not Muslims, even respecting them is very important. But the parents' honor, the parents' respect should be above everything. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Anishkur, and even Abdullah ibn Abbas mentions that in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has paired things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has paired three things. And them three cannot be complete without their pair. And the first one is, Atiullah wa Atiur Rasul. If you do Atiullah but you don't do Atiur Rasul, you're not complete. It's not sufficient. Next one, Aqimus Salat wa Atu Zakah. You pray namaz but you don't give zakat. Or you give zakah, you don't pray namaz. It's not sufficient. You're incomplete. And the third one, Anishkul li wa li walidayk. Be grateful to Allah and be grateful to your parents. You be grateful to your Creator Allah, but you're not being grateful to your parents. Incomplete. That's why Rasul said, Ridal Rabbi fi ridal walid. That if you want to see, if you want to know right now, is my Allah pleased with me? Then what should you do? Look, is my father pleased with me? In terms of my deen, is my father pleased with me? Yes. If my father is pleased with me, right now my Allah is pleased with me. وَسَقَةُ الرَّبِّ فِي سَقْتِ الْوَالِدِ. And if right now my father is displeased with me, he's angry with me, he's not happy with me, then take this that Allah is also not happy with me. Inshallah, we'll continue next week. And if this was a distinctive and a common factor in all the Anbiya, the respect and the honor for their parents, Nuh salam, the dua he makes, Rabbi Ighfirli wa li walidayya. Oh Allah, have mercy, forgive me and my parents. Ismail salam is put down before Ibrahim salam is about to slaughter him. What did he say? Ya bati fa'al ma tu'mar. Oh my father, submit his straight to his father. Ya bati fa'al ma tu'mar. Do as you wish. Don't worry. I'm ready. I'm submitting for you. Do as you wish. Wa barram bi walidayya. Yahya alayhi salam. Allah makes mention about Yahya alayhi salam. Wa barram bi walidayya. He was very good to his parents. Wa barram bi walidati. Ya Isa alayhi salam. Allah mentions that he said, I've been instructed to be very good to my mother, Maryam alayhi salam. So in the Quran you mention, and the hadith, and there are also the other narrations that show the negative impact. When a person disobeys, disregards, disrespects, dishonors his parents, then the wabal and the ills and the evil impact and the evil effects in this world and the hereafter. And inshallah, if we have time, we'll talk to you because it's a very important matter. Nowadays, youngsters sometimes become a bit selfish and they only think about themselves. It's just me, my life. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter if the mother's crying at home. It doesn't matter if the father's depressed because of my attitude. As long as I'm living my life, is okay. It's a very wrong attitude. In fact, a believer should live a life where he is happy and everyone around him, his siblings, his parents, his mother, his father, his wife, everybody is happy with him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us a correct understanding. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi wa sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.